Welcome to MATHurdays. Math so fun, we do it on Saturdays. My name is Teresa Wells, and let's jump right on in. The link for today's session, which I'm sure you have, but just in case, is in the chat box right there. I know we have many returning folks who have been to a MATHurdays before. I'm going to lean on you all for support with welcoming anyone who this is their first time. If this is your first time, welcome. In this session, you're going to learn a math routine and a rich task that you can use and adapt to multiple grade levels. One of the things I focus on is a lot of representations and student voice. So let's jump right in. Let me share my screen. There we go. Alrighty. And so on slide 2 is just some contact information. Slide 3 are the 2 links that you're going to want to bookmark if you don't have them already. I have templates where there are a lot of just kind of general templates. There's definitely some mathy ones down at the bottom that you can use, reuse, and modify. The second link is a link to all the other MATHurdays, minus the last couple of weeks. I was in Florida and didn't have all my computer techie stuff, so we'll get more updated ones there soon. Alrighty, join me on slide 4 or 5, wherever you like. Photos, images are amazing. That helps us build our community, but if not, please at least grab a text box. Put it here on the slide and tell us what's going on, what successes and celebrations do you have? And Stephanie, tell us about your pup Tater. And is your pup here with us right now? Oh my goodness. Welcome to MATHurdays, little guy. Wonderful. Oh, that is so exciting to hear. What a great way of starting our Saturday. First grade is awesome. And Colette, did you want, I assume that was yours there because I saw your email. Did you want to tell us a little bit about the virtual summit? Have you been before? Oh, no, that was Lisa. Okay. I think multiple people have done that. Lisa, would you tell us just a little bit about it? Have you been before? And, what should other people know? Thank you. It feels like ages ago that I put it together. Of course, it takes so long for people to kind of get everything and do these great things. But folks, it's free PD and it's really good. Christina gets some really great people there. So definitely check that out. Um, Very cool. And who has a frost warning for tonight? Hi, Gail. Oh my goodness. And Laura, it looks like you're going to get some good sleep over these next 3 days. Wonderful. And Raha, I love your picture. Boatload of sushi. Very cool. Oh, folks, this just warmed my heart. What a great way of starting. So, if you're new to us, this is Successes and Celebrations. Even in a PD where we don't necessarily see each other than maybe on Saturdays, we are still a community, and we build this community through just a few minutes at the beginning of each session, with pictures, with captions, with little hearts going back and forth. And so I hope that you're really feeling welcomed with that also. We're going to move into our routine. This comes from choral counting. However, we're not going to do the choral part as much. We're really going to look at the patterns part. So I keep moving it, on slide 7, I have what I would typically do over multiple days. One of the beauties of choral counting is it just gets all the kids kind of counting the numbers out loud, doing hand motions, doing body motions, and more. We're going to really zero in on day 2 when we're finding the patterns. And the neat thing about this is I like to use this over multiple days. So I'll use the exact same slide 4 days in a row and just keep increasing the rigor every day. Less work for me as a teacher and more thinking for the students. And so, since I have a 3rd grader who's working on his 7s right now, I thought we would do that today. And that's on slide 8. So just take a quick moment and look at the numbers there on slide 8. Your job is all about finding patterns. So, even beyond just kind of looking for the numbers, see if you see any patterns in there. And I'm going to go ahead and remove this first bar. And I see some people are typing in there. That's totally cool. Another way of doing it is you can raise your hand in Zoom, but I know Zoom is still new to some people. So if you want to share a pattern, feel free to turn on your mic or raise your hand and I'll call on you. You can also write them in there if you prefer. But what's really neat about the 7s is the next one. I'm going to open up the next one there. So let's do this one. I'm going to put this one in orange. If that was you, tell us double the first row to get the second row. What do you mean by that? That's cool. Tell us which one you were thinking of, though. Oh, neat. So why does it work for this one? Like, why does doubling also work? We'll keep the part you're on and leave that one for you. And Lisa, feel free to keep working on your little orange speech bubble. What is an ABBC pattern, and how do you see the red one there? so you're looking at just, I'm going to change these little circles to just look at the tens place. So you're seeing a 1 and then a 2, 2, is that right? Or a 10, 20, 20? Uh-huh. And you're saying so it works up to here. Is that right? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Ooh, neat. So we are seeing some repetition in the tens place. And we're seeing that in the 20s, in the 40s, in the 70s. I'm also seeing it in the 90s. Let's kind of keep that in the back of our head because there is something really cool happening with that. Um, let's check out this one down here, the blue. I just put you in blue. Oh, and by the way, this is an interactive slide. So if you see more patterns, check it out. We can add a bajillion more of these little speech bubbles. I want everyone to feel included. And we just kind of took this a little bit of a different way here. So if this was you in blue, one's column is the same in the first and third row numbers. Where do you see that? So should I unveil the fourth row or the fifth row next, Colette, to kind of see if your pattern continues? All right, let's take a look. Oh yeah, I forgot I did this cool thing. So it did start to continue, but there's some blanks there. And because you know what, I want to make sure everyone's included. Folks, if you see a blank and you get the pattern, go ahead and start filling some of those in. And while that's happening, Roanna, I saw that your hand was up. Did you want to share your noticing with me? Oh, and 42 is an important number with sevens. And you said we can see it everywhere. So all over the place, we've got plus 42. I'm going to add another speech bubble and put that one as purple. And that's everywhere. Very cool. And I see that some people are adding numbers in there. That's awesome. I'm curious about if you are adding 7 on your fingers, which is kind of the way I do it. If you're imagining 7 dots on like a tens frame, or if you're seeing a pattern when you add the new pieces. Raha, I noticed your hand was up. Did you want to share what you saw? Awesome. So let's grab an arrow. So it's not from the first row to the second row. It's the first to the third row that we add 70. You know what, though? I wonder if we can do something within the second row also. So Raha, if I reveal row 4, does your pattern continue with those also? Take your time. Neat. So we're adding 70 like when we bump a row. How does that relate to earlier? We said that you add 35 to each row. Cool. So now we've got a connection to 70. We've got some really cool values here. We've got the 7, we've got 35, we've got 70 on the diagonals, we've got 42. Like these are all really important sevens numbers, right? And I see that someone else is finding a pattern in the ones place, and I'd love for you to share out this one. We'll make it green. Tell me about the 72, 72, 72, 72 pattern. Very cool. So we're seeing a ones place. Now, Stephanie, I'm curious if we change the number of columns. Right now, this is at 5 columns wide. If we change that so it was only 4 columns wide, do you think that your pattern would continue? And so here's next week. I'll work on this one for several days of the warm up. But next week, I'm going to pull out these exact same sevens. And this time, I'm only going to make them 4 columns because Stephanie is invested in this part now. And I'm going to see what other students can see. Like, are my patterns consistent? Does it only work when it's times 5? Because 5 is a really pretty number, right? Awesome. All right. So we took this in a lot of different ways. In a more structured environment, you might have students raise their hand, call on them, and you would type their thinking into the text boxes. When students feel more ownership, as you all have just demonstrated today, they're just going to go in and start putting stuff on the slide because it's not the teacher's slide anymore. It's this shared slide. And that's one of the nice things about this community that we saw. There are so many patterns. We could go on forever, but folks, I've got a really great task for you all, and I think we're ready to get messy with this math. So we're going to transition to our rich task. And the reason why I focus on rich tasks as opposed to just teaching an algorithm is because you will actually see all 8 of these NCTM practices here in this rich task. So you're going to see me posing purposeful questions. You're going to be focusing on the conceptual understanding. There's going to be productive struggle, and the whole conversation uses student thinking. But before we begin, I'm going to give everyone the opportunity to use this problem-solving oath. I'm going to say it out loud. If you want to pledge to this today, make your name public in the chat box. It says, I, insert your name, Teresa, promise to try my best. I will make sense of patterns and numbers. I will use manipulatives and drawings. I will make mistakes. I will ask questions. I will listen to other ideas. I will stay engaged by always trying to find another solution or representation. I am a problem solver. I make the world a better place. And I can see we already have tons of great problem solvers here now. That's wonderful. And if you join me on slide 11, here's our rich, juicy task. It's all about bowling. I can't wait to go bowling again. It says Party Zone is creating a new bowling alley game called Crazy Bowling. They plan to have 11 lanes, and each lane will have a different arrangement of pins. Lane 1 through 10 will follow the pattern for the pin arrangement. Using this pattern, describe the pin arrangement on the 10th lane. But we have the 11th lane as a bonus lane, and it's going to change day to day. This is how they're going to market it, get great customers and all that. Sometimes it'll be called the 11th lane, and that means it corresponds to the 11th pattern. But on other days, they're going to make it crazy and make it like the 23rd lane. And so it's going to use the pin arrangement from the 23rd pattern. Your job is to understand what the pattern is for any number lane, such as the 82nd lane or the 56th lane, and so on. I've given you several virtual manipulatives on slide 12, but since Google Docs are so interactive, I've also put the lane arrangement with movable pins and bird's eye view dots on your slides that you can use also. So I'm about to put you into breakout rooms. When you're in these breakout rooms, focus on as many different ways that you can possibly represent this pattern. Let me go ahead and set these up. Alrighty, our breakout rooms are ready. If you are new to Zoom, what you're going to want to do is minimize your Google Doc window. There's a little invitation to join your breakout room, and you can head there now. So if you can still hear me, there are people in the breakout room waiting for you. What you'll want to do is just minimize your Google Doc until you can get your Zoom window back up, and there's a little invitation saying like, hey, you're invited to room number blank. Remy, can you say that again? I thought that was such a neat way of seeing it. I've done this problem so many times, and that's the first time I think I've ever heard of the like the situation where something's kind of disappearing, like it was there, but now it's not anymore. So what I did for you is I kind of put this triangular pattern that you were describing on the next slide. Um, and maybe that can help explain it to other folks about like which ones you're keeping. That was such a neat way of thinking about it. Hi there, group. Can I ask why you have rectangles around the red dots? So the top row becomes almost that most important kind of baseline, and then from there you get the bottom row. Is that right? Cool. Hi there, group. I see two. Oh, go ahead. I see two things here in your math. I see a -1 and I see a +1. Um, and what I like about that is I see that both of them are correct, but how come? Like in math, if I wrote a -1 on one problem and my friend put a +1, like only one of us are right. So why are they both right here? So I have a challenge for your group. Um, can you show a visual way of how we see 2l-1 and how we see 2 times the quantity of l-1 and that +1? Like, is there a way we can visually see the two things? Mm-hmm. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the main room. So, this problem, what I love about it is so accessible for our youngest learners to start talking about patterns. But it is a linear equation for algebra 1. Like, that's kind of where you would open a textbook and find something like this. And so what I'm going to look at here is how we address learning in the younger grades through a recursive model. And what that means is, hey, if I know how many pins are on lane 64, I can do something to figure out how many are on 65. So if I know the one before it, I can do the next. And that's the most accessible for our youngest audience. But then we've got this other part, this function of how do I figure out the 1756th lane? And I don't know that one yet. And so that's kind of the progression of the talk that we're going to do. And what I've done is I've kind of taken some slides in their rough draft form and I've copied them. So if you would join me on slide 26, I'll also share my screen. And on slide 26, I would love it if whoever was working on this Desmos creation, if you can tell us what this shows us and how it relates to the equation that I put here with this little green arrow. And feel free to move the arrow around as you're kind of explaining your thinking to us. And so how does that relate to this equation? I saw it may not have been you, but Gail, does it relate to what was written here? Mm-hmm. Gotcha. But this is indeed the type of equation that students will write because they're getting a sense of an equation, they're getting a sense of the plus two, the idea that, like, hey, every time I increase an x by 1, I increase a y by 2. So we're going to look at this kind of early understanding and recognize that this is correct when we're looking at recursive, when we're looking at the, hey, if I know this, I can figure out the next one. And so using this as our foundation, let's head down to slide 27. And this group said, hey, the most important thing to know here is the top row. So group, can you tell us what's so important about the top row? And so once you know that, how does that help you figure out how many pins are there? So now we're starting to move into that idea of a function. Before, we saw plus 2, and that plus 2 is the most important thing. And now we're seeing minus 1 as being the most important thing. And as we continue this thinking, we get down to slide 28. Now, slide 28 looks a whole lot like slide 26. We have the same table of values. We even have the same graph, and I recognize that we could get into a great discussion about why the slope of one graph looks different than the other just because of the way that they've scaled it. But right now, our conversation is going to be on the equations that they're making. So slide 26 focused on +2, and slide 27 is focusing on -1. So group 1, I'm curious, how did you get to this equation that you came up with? And did you do anything similar to what they did on slide 27? So the -1 is the front row of the bowling. I'm going to have us unpack that just a bit more. I'm actually going to take a snippet here of the Desmos equation that you wrote, put it back on slide 27. Where exactly do we see the 2n, and where do we see the -1? So I'm back on slide 27, but I stole the equation from 28. So if you see it, if you know where I can find this 2n, you know where I can find this -1, feel free to turn on your mic. You can also write it on the slide if you prefer to have a voice that way. So we double it and then we take 1 away. Oh, so see, now we've got another one. We will come back to that one too. That is on my list. So you see it as being, before we can get to 2n minus 1, we need to do n plus n minus 1. Let's go ahead and duplicate this slide and do just that. I'm going to take out some of the other things here. All right. I'm now on slide 28. Y equals n plus n minus 1. Where's n and where's n minus 1? If we were going to point to them, where would we point? Oh, okay. So we've got the top row plus the bottom row. Y equals top row plus bottom row. All right. So I'm going to take that. How do we make sense of, sometimes in algebra, we'll like sprinkle this magic down because our teacher said, oh, they're like terms, so you can combine them. And I'm like, okay, I don't really know why I'm doing it, but let's go ahead and do it. Convince me why we can combine these through images. How is this the same as slide 27? Now we've got a 2n minus 1. Remy, tell me how you see that now. So it's kind of weird when they're stacked on a diagonal, but as soon as we put them in a rectangle, like I've got here on this slide 27, as soon as we put it in that rectangle, we can start to see it. All right, but we have yet another equation. Slide 30. They've got a real cool, funky one. This whole time we've been talking about minus ones, and they're like, nuh-uh, nope, it's plus one. So how could it possibly be that before we said minus one was correct, and now we're saying it's plus one? I'm going to ask group 3. I've deleted a lot of what you had before because it's the process I want to know. How on earth do we see the equation or the expression that you have on slide 30? So we say it's L minus 1 B. I love how you use the word pairs to make this more manageable. So I'm going to put the 2 in purple and the pairs in purple so that we can really see what that pairs is related to. And then we have this L minus 1. So if we put this one in red and then we put the 3 in red, now we can start to see, oh wait, that's what the L minus 1 means, that we have one last lane. And so where's the plus 1 again? And I would maybe even call that turquoise pin. So the plus 1 is the single pin, whereas just a few minutes ago on slide 27, the minus 1 was the single pin. And so then we get into the talking about what's most important. Is it the top row? Is it the lane? Is it the change in that value? And there are some really other cool patterns here that I would even bring up in the class as maybe a next day or as a homework assignment. And I wanted to do them justice, so I've put them below here. On slide 31, Remy, would you tell us just how we should look at this visualization? What was your brain doing when you were seeing the pins? So now we're not adding one, We're not subtracting one. We have a growing pattern of solid reds and a growing pattern of light reds. Now, you're probably thinking, why would I kind of go through all of this? If you've ever taught the associative property, if you've ever taught combining like terms, if you ever said, bring this over to the other side, if you do it on one side, you should do it on the other, this is a big, messy equation here. You're going to get lots of combining like terms, lots of moving things left and right. And instead of just saying, oh, what we do on one side, you do to the other, we have a visualization now. So I can say that the plus one here is the same as the minus one, or I add this here and I subtract here, and I don't have to rely on my teacher told me it's called the associative property, or my teacher told me this. I can see it visually and the way that that's changing. And that's what makes this beautiful. There is one others. I put it on slide 32 because it is really cool the way that they use the number, the hundreds chart, one that I haven't really seen before. And so I'm going to give this group just a minute to kind of bring out what they noticed. It totally connects to the choral counting we did at the beginning, and then we'll end our session today. So group 4, what did you notice on the hundreds chart? And I don't know about you all, but I have just enough here to have a taste for it and go, does that always work? And so this is a great opportunity to give some actual meaningful homework of just giving a kids, say, hey, take out the hundreds chart, see if you can find this pattern somewhere else, see if you can make sense of it. And when we come back, the next day or, whenever, then, we can see if this continues. And just think about it. If each kid did one lane on here and saw if the pattern continued, you could very easily add all of their examples on a slide and you would have 30 some different observations of this hundreds chart. All right, folks. I'm going to go think about that one some more. It is the end of our hour. In general, the questions that I wanted to ask were on slide 33. I think I hit many of these today. And I also have some frequently asked questions. If you're new here and you're wondering like, hey, how do people kind of get proficient in Google Slides? Some of these videos on slide 34 can support you with that learning. If you all have questions, feel free to turn on your mics, but also you can put them on slide 35. If there's another topic or grade level you want to see, please put it in there. I am interested in all grade levels from kinder through calc. And there's some upcoming PDs that I am in that I wanted to put out here on June 1st through the Global Math Department, and also on July 29th, the Virtual Math Summit. But as a couple of people mentioned earlier today, there's a preview out there right now that talks about how you can do math routines in your classroom this year. So check those out. If you have questions, let me know. Thanks for joining us for MATHurdays. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did it not take you there? Yeah, it is. Here we go. virtualmathsummit.com. Mm-hmm. So they are July 29th and 30th, and they all of the pieces will be available for 10 days after the conference for you to watch asynchronously. Mm-hmm. All right, folks, I hope you have a wonderful weekend and look forward to keeping this up. I should have Eventbrite. I'll figure it out hopefully within the next hour, but um, it'll be Zoom linked and it'll be just like before, but I'll have it all preset. Of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a bunch of kind of baby steps that I'll do. I'll also give you a link to an asynchronous PD that talks a lot about breakout rooms and the importance of them and why you need to like kind of set up some norms beforehand. The norms that I use, let me find them real quick. Yep. Um, in the chat box there, I've put a link to some slides that I have. There's a couple norms that I like to start with. And the first one is so often we set up rules with our students, things that they have to do. And one of the first things I do is I start with my teacher expectations, what you can count on me for. So, kind of looking at that a little bit reversed. And what is interesting here isn't so much that the kids are like, oh, I can lean on my teacher. But it's that the very first one is I'm going to respect the way you choose to interact, chat, voice, and video. And we can see here today that there are some people who, prefer to just use the chat box. And if you recognize that and use that to your advantage, it can be really useful. And everyone doesn't have to use the mic or everyone doesn't have to use video and kind of balancing out those pieces. Letting students know that if they're feeling unsafe, that you're their biggest advocate, I think is an important norm to bring out in the beginning, because that's one of the reasons students don't talk online is that they're not feeling safe. They're not feeling comfortable. So I've got a couple different things in here that I bring up that I think are a great start. And then I go into some important reasons why you might want to have breakout rooms, why you might want to have the interaction. And so some of these are just graphics that might be useful for your teachers. But in terms of norms, and when I mentioned baby steps, slides 3 through 6 kind of talk about like the baby steps that I think about. And these are editable, so you can go in and you can change them. But I don't give students a slide deck of 110 slides and put them in breakout rooms multiple times. I start out slow, just 2 kiddos in a room for a really short amount of time for a real brief conversation and then come back. And what I found, the reason this is important is teachers won't do interactive stuff if all their students are staying quiet. Like they need their students to interact. And when that doesn't happen, they're there to be great teachers. They're like, okay, what do I do next? Maybe I talk. But if we do this protocol of like, you get them in for 2 minutes, they talk, you get them in for 2 minutes, they talk, you get them in for 2 minutes to talk, do that enough times, they're going to start to increase their confidence. So this is kind of a mapping of the baby steps that I've used. And they're 2 breakout rooms, but you could really easily just change this and say, how do I get kids to type on a screen? Well, we start off with just type your name, do one of the estimation routines. And I've got a couple of things here that you might find useful, such as slide 7, like what are the most important things that we need to do for our next generation of students, making mistakes, teaching them how to say sorry online. And then on slide 8, this is kind of where I get into with, especially with like 4th grade, when kids are starting to go through some like hormonal changes and a little bit of the bullying is starting to step up more, is what do you do? How do you become an advocate for each other? And we practice this routine of like, okay, so someone said this is what I do next. And this is when I get the teacher, and this is when I advocate for a friend, and so on. So those are some of those resources. The other thing I would send teachers to is on my website, I have a bunch of routines. The nice thing about routines is they only take 7 to 10 minutes. And so even if a teacher's nervous about it, it's a great starting point because it gets some interaction. And that's what we've done at the beginning of each of these MATHurdays, is just a quick little routine that gets more student interaction. And there's videos of those on there that might help them out. Yeah. The routines are a great place to start. Ones that I would recommend kind of starting with is something like clothesline math, because it's accessible at every grade level. Kids type in their own number and they drag it down to the number line. They start to see what other people do. So it invites some positive peer pressure of like, oh, I get what to do now. And I mean, I'll be guilty of that too. If I'm sitting through a PD and they're just talking to me, I'm going to be doing some other things and my brain might even drift away. And so when then they say, oh, use the chat box and give me your thinking, I'm like, oh, wait, what were we talking about? So there's this need for constant interaction, dragging something around, moving something around, that will make it more engaging. Yeah. The other thing you can send out to teachers too is if they do sign up for the virtual math summit, I do have, it's about a 30-40 minute long video about how to do 5 different math routines in your classroom. And that's like if they sign up for it, they get the little preview video of it, and I walk them through exactly how to do it, and so in a half hour you get 5 routines, so that's usually enough to get teachers interested in watching it. So maybe start with that. It's Memorial Day, so the schools are off on Monday, so yeah. Gotcha. Thank you. You too. Yeah, sure thing. And that's something so important, to online learning, that I try to value, is that people do things different ways. And if I only so when I started doing online learning, we didn't have cameras, and like even though we did, they were so grainy. Our norm was turn off your camera, just like most people's norms now are mute your microphone. Like don't suck down everyone's bandwidth with your camera. And I also used to play a ton of video games before this online learning. And that's where I learned the importance of some people will just write in the chat box. They don't use the microphone. And sometimes that airspace for the microphone is so valuable when you have 50 people trying to defeat a monster. Like, you can't have everyone jibber jabbing on the mic. Like, there is a specific time and place. So there are these weird norms that happen in online gaming communities that can definitely be adapted here as well. So thanks for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think any adult who ever listens to a radio morning show can definitely relate to you don't need to have cameras to know someone's personality. Sometimes that camera is very intrusive, especially as students are, working through their identities of who they are, who they are online, and they live in a world where their instas show perfection all the time. That this idea of the day-to-day camera on you is exhausting to have to perform all the time. I know I'm not someone who usually has it on all the time. As soon as I'm done with like the intro, I usually turn it off and to have it off, but I'm still listening and interacting because it's exhausting to me otherwise. And you'll see that in the video game community too. Absolutely no cameras. It sucks down your bandwidth and you aren't as good of a player. So you turn those off and, you still interact. Well, I hope you feel welcomed and that you come to others. We do it every Saturday, and the idea being that whether you teach second grade or you teach trig, that we can find a problem that will relate to your grade level. Mm-hmm. Lydia, I do use. Mhm. Yeah, well, we love having you here. Lydia, I do use a lot of playingcards.io. It just and So I have those on my website also. And what I love about it is the random number generator. And soon I think Google will have it, but in the meantime, I use these, and I've got a little collection of games that I love using in the class and that I need to keep using, and so they're on there. I do have a short little video that will walk you through it. You know what? It was all the way down at the bottom, but what I do is I take one game and I share it with the different links. But I've gotten even more tech savvy since I've done that. What I've learned to do is to make each pair of students their own link. And this link will always be available for the pair, and I usually keep pairs together for a couple weeks or a month. And then I just re-upload the new game file. Are you familiar with how to do that? Okay. No problem. So if you want, we can demonstrate it real quick now, and you'll get to see how to do it. Do you have a few minutes? Yeah. Cool. So this will be our link. I'm going to put it in the chat box here. You guys can go into it also. It is blank right now. It has absolutely nothing in it, but you can all interact with it. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to download a game and re-upload it. So I've got it on this recording now also. Suppose, what's a really fun one? Oh, let's do the Fill 2. I'm going to download this game. So if I clicked it from my website, it downloads a PCIO file. I'm going to click on the little edit. Room options, and I'm going to import the file. This will import everything. I don't have to do anything. The game is now live. And so in this case, you're trying to fill up the two holes. We'll flip over some cards. You'll grab them. There's some directions on the side, and then you can move over these little like hundreds rods to start filling up your pieces. So this is an example of one of the games. But I like to keep this link for my partners the same and just put a new game in when they're ready for the next one. So they might say like, I'm ready for my next game. I'll say, okay, well, now we need to work on biggest sum. So again, I click on my little edit table button. Under room options is import from file. And what I'm doing is just bringing a new game into their same link. And the game's automatically going to change. Yes. So if you want, you can go ahead and start moving stuff around on this. I get to see it too. I just simply don't click on anything. So I could put, like, I'm going to sit here, make a new game. I've got directions on my website for this. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head right now, but there we go. I'll put mine in. I can see what's happening just like you can see this. Yep. I typically have about 4 or 5 links open. I can see right where they are. They'll type in the chat box, we finished our game. I think we get this. Can we have a new one? And then that's when I gear up and gear down for different students. So if you want to learn more, I have a video right at the very top. It's teresawills.com/games. There's a video that teaches you how to download the file. There's a whole bunch there. And what I gave you at the end. Okay, so maybe I just need to move these 2 videos at the end up some more. I thought they were a little redundant, but maybe those should go back up. Of course.